morning? Good. Sunny weather. Let's just be honest. Yeah, that's good. Let's be honest. How many people were happier yesterday? You just felt like life was good, and I mean we're getting there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna have a couple more cold days this month, but I found out who was praying against the warm weather coming, and we took them out this week, and so that they're no longer living in Ottawa. We sent them to South America or South. Never mind. That's a bad joke. But we're getting the warm weather. What a bad transition into my sermon. Hey, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I loved pirates. In fact, when I was a kid, I still love pirates. I love pirate movies. I love the idea of people who are looking for buried treasure. And when I was a kid, I was very, very captivated by this idea that there were places in the world that most people didn't know about, but that I might accidentally find, where there would be buried treasure. It might be in a sandy place. It might be in the backyard of my house. It might be in my house if I dug through the kitchen floor. There would be a place where there was some buried treasure, and I might be able to find it. When I was 5, we lived in Brampton, and me and my buddies would drive our bikes all over the neighborhood during the summertime. And there was this one spot near my friend David Walsh's house, and as we went through the school, my house was right beside a junior high school, and as we would drive through the parking lot and then go through the path through the back of the school, we would come to the place, the entranceway that would go onto his street and right next to his house. And as we were driving by this one day, as we looked down, we saw a sewer, which was not very enamoring, but in the sewer were these license plates. The people had thrown various license plates of different colors and various ages down there, and so we stopped. And we looked, got off our bikes, and we began to look, and we began to reach our hands down there and tried to pull the license plates up, but we couldn't get our hands through the crevices. As we began to talk about what was before us, we felt that we had hit our pirate moment. That this was a treasure, I don't know what was in our minds, but we believed that these license plates were worth a lot of money. That if we could acquire these license plates, that everything would be fantastic, that we would probably be able to sell them somewhere, because these were probably ancient license plates from Ontario, and they'd be worth some incredible amounts of money, and I would be made for the rest of my life. The 5-year-old thinking. And so our hearts were leaping inside of us. We had found our treasure. And so we began to do whatever it took to get these license plates. We went over to David Walsh's house, and we found some string, and we tried to find some kind of contraptions where we would release tools and things like that down into the sewer. I'll never forget, David Walsh lost a pair of pliers. We're trying to bring the pliers down and figure if we can just hook it up with the string, maybe we can get the license plate. And we're trying that, and all of a sudden we lose his pliers, and so now our new goal is not just the treasure, but it's also trying to get the pliers back. And we're using coat hangers. I mean, we're trying everything, and it's just no luck. And so we keep thinking, and we're working hard, and I mean the day is just passing away, but we are so desperate to find this treasure. And so we go back and forth between a couple homes, and we go into the basement or into the garage and get our dad's tools, and we figure that if we can pry open the sewer, that this will allow us to get these license plates. And so now here these 5-year-old kids are trying to pry open a iron sewer. And we've got these tools, and we are pressing, and we're bending the tools that our dads own. I mean, we're in some big trouble. We're bending tools, we're breaking sticks, we're trying ruthlessly to get the sewers open, because we believe that what's inside the sewers are incredible treasures. All day long. A summer day where boys should be riding their bikes, where boys should be playing ball, where boys should be having fun playing hide and seek. We spent the entire day ruining tools, losing tools, and using incredible amounts of energy trying to dig up this treasure. And by the end of the day, we realized that it was of no avail, that we would have to leave the treasure there, and we would walk away having wasted an entire day with no treasure. Friends, I don't know about you, but as I look back at my life, I feel that there have been many days like that. I feel there have been many days where I've put a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of money pursuing treasures that I thought would bring me great joy. I have spent a lot of days going after things that I thought at the end, when I could have it in my hands, that it would bring me great, great joy. I mean tons of money. I mean working hard so that I could have that item, that piece of clothing or that toy, that individual object that would bring me such great fulfillment and would make my life so much better. Only to find that after I achieved it that I didn't really have a treasure at all. Wasted days. Wasted days. You know, many of us live our lives in pursuit of treasures. We live our lives digging in places where we think that we will grab hold of something that will bring incredible benefit, but we are left empty just like I was, just like David Walsh was, just like Jason Curry was that day as we dug for those license plates. The digging we do is our efforts and our money. It's taking our money and our efforts and finding a spot and digging in a spot, and we say we're going to just keep digging here because we are just convinced that there's going to be a treasure if we put our money into this, if we put our efforts into this. We're convinced that we will get a treasure and it'll be so fulfilling. Jesus knew that we were like this. He understood that humanity was kind of inclined in this way, that we would have this bent in our lives to pick up our shovel, our resources, and our money and to pour it into places where we would be found empty. And so Jesus turns to the crowd that we have talked about the last 2 months, the same crowd that he has talked to about prayer, and he begins to talk to them about this very issue. So if you want to just quickly turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 6. I want to look at verse 19 to 21 as we talk about digging for treasure. Verse 19 says this, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." The crowd just north of the Sea of Galilee, they've been hearing some of Jesus' teachings. We've talked about this over the last 2 months. He's talked to them about the three main ingredients in a believer of God's life. He starts off the sermons about talking about giving, how you should give. Then he moves on and he talks to them about prayer, and we just spent 2 months talking about how to pray the Lord's Prayer. And then he goes on and he talks about fasting. These were the three main ingredients of every believer's life. And so Jesus finishes the three, and you think that he would move on to the more important things. But Jesus stops and he says, hey, I actually want to talk about money again. I want to go back to the first point. I want to talk to you about money again because I know money is such a big issue. And you heard it last week. Ian talked about all the scriptures where Jesus referred to money. He talked about money more than prayer. He talked about money more than many of the things where we put our attention. But friends, the truth of the matter is money is the thing that we feel most uncomfortable talking about in Christianity. Anybody want to say amen to that? True. It's true. I mean, people don't get excited going, all right, Pastor Jeff's going to preach about money. I'm going to give it all away now. I'm coming to church to get rid of my money. Nobody thinks that. But Jesus knows it's the issue of our hearts. And so he begins to talk about money again. And he talks about it in terms of treasure. And there are three things I just really quickly want to point out. The first thing that I think that he wants us to understand is that we need to decide where we're going to dig. We need to decide where we're going to dig with our lives. When I talk about digging, I mean where we're going to put our energy and our money. We have to determine where we're going to dig. Jesus starts off and he says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. The actual translation is stop. Stop storing up treasures on earth. Stop storing up treasures in the places where they're not going to mean anything. Stop doing that. And then he says, hey, and what you should do is you should actually put your energies, your efforts, you should dig for treasures that will last eternally. It's not just suggestive language. Jesus isn't going, hey crowd, it's so good to have a crowd here today. This is one of our biggest attendants. And so I'm going to suggest what might be good. He says, hey, stop. Stop going to the path over here where the X that marks the spot is about temporary things that will only last for today, things that will fall apart, things that have no eternal value. He says, stop digging there. And he says, come over to the place where you're digging, where this X, where it's about the things that are eternal. Put your money, put your resources into places where it will last forever. And Jesus is talking decisive language, and he is saying to you that you have got to make a decision about where you're going to dig. Friends, every day you have to make a decision what you're going to do with your money. Every day you have got to make a decision what you're going to do, where you're going to put it, where you're going to put the shovel. Is it going to be in this X right here, where I pour all my money into things that will fade away, things that will break down, things that will need constant updates? Will I put all my money, will I dig in this spot right here and just hold on to the treasures that will last for maybe 70 years, or most likely in our society about 3.5? Or will I choose to dig in this spot where when I dig and I open up the ground, I find eternal rewards, things that won't last for 5 years, things that won't last for 10 years, but things that will last for all eternity? He says, you make a choice. He's placing the control in your hands. I'll never forget a moment where our van was coming to the end of its life. And we had this Dodge Caravan, and it was coming to the end of its life, and we knew that we had to replace it. Ainsley and I were being very sensible with our money, and we determined that we would start saving and begin to prepare for the transition. I don't know about you, but I'm notorious for having vehicles that caused me to buy new ones only after they died. You know, I'm standing at the car's funeral going, it's about time that I buy something now. Like I'm never in the stages where the car is very, very sick and the doctor's giving me a bad prognosis and going, okay, this is the time. No, it's at the funeral where we're singing Amazing Grace over my car that's when I decide that I need to buy something. And so the car is coming to the end of its life, and I can hear the doctor's prognosis. It doesn't have much time left. And we're putting our money aside to invest in a new vehicle. And I'll never forget, we're at this youth convention. I'm running, it's my event, and I'm taking up offerings, and I'm encouraging the students, hey, we need to give into the next generation. We need to believe for the future. And I had to take offering after offering after offering, and I'm coming up with every scripture in the Bible. I'm preaching great little sermonettes on giving, and yet I haven't given anything at this point in this convention. And so our speaker for that convention, I always ask our speaker to do one service or one offering appeal, usually on the Saturday night, because it was the one where everybody's ramped up to go, and I knew that by that point they would have a connection with our students. And so our speaker gets up and he throws out the appeal, and he talks about digging, about taking our finances and putting them into places where there's eternal reward. About picking up the shovel and finding the X where at the end of the X there's a treasure that's eternal, and he begins to talk about that. And Ainsley and I are sitting there, and we're thinking about it. We don't have lots of money in our checkings account, in our day-to-day, our operations. We have this money that we put aside in our savings. And at that moment, it didn't feel like we could give because of circumstances, but as we listened, we listened to the voice of God. And in fact, Ainsley's, when it comes to giving money, she hears God much, much more clearly than me. It's true. I said to Ian Green last week, I said, the thing I love about my wife is that whatever I think we should give, God always speaks to her the real amount. It's always much higher than I think it is. And so God spoke to her, and she said, I think we should give this amount. And friends, it was what we had put aside for a vehicle. It was one of those moments where we had to pick up the shovel and decide where we're gonna dig. That might seem irresponsible to you, but when God speaks it to you, there's no irresponsibility about it. And I picked up the shovel, and I really wanted to invest in and dig into a place where I could have a nice new car. Something that didn't chug along, something that teenagers didn't laugh at. I wanted to dig here. But the Spirit of God told me to dig over here. He told me to dig into the eternal. Friends, I didn't think I could, but I took that money and we wrote the check and then went throw it in the offering that day. It's kind of liberating, actually. When you obey God, it's very liberating. Because in those moments, you are so confident that you've heard his voice that you now have to be completely dependent upon him. And so that day we gave it to him, and I thought, man, we are so messed up, we're never going to have the money for the next vehicle. And I won't give you all the circumstances and make this a longer sermon than it should be. But I want to tell you that God did come through. He did surprise us with some people who stepped into our lives and actually blessed us later on. He did look after our vehicle. We didn't have a big luxury vehicle after that, but we had a vehicle that worked. All I know is that I chose to dig in a place that had eternal reward. And that was the right place to dig. And Jesus is saying, hey, when it comes to your finances, you actually have the choice. You actually have the choice to dig in one spot or the other. Your money is in your control. Now, some of you don't feel that way. As some of you think, no, my money controls me. Pastor, if you only understood my bills, if you only understood how difficult it is, my money controls me. It's in charge of me. I feel my money dragging me by the collar in a certain direction. You need to buy this. You need to buy this. You need to buy this. And I feel like my money is in control of me. And so some of us say, you know what? I really can't give. I really can't dig. I really can't pick up the shovel and dig in the eternal things. I can't tithe. I can't give in offerings. I can't go above and beyond with my money. I can't dig here. I know that's the right thing to do, but I can't because my money is controlling me, and it causes me to dig over here. Friends, I want to tell you this. Most people, I'm not saying everybody. I know there's always some exceptions. But most people, the decision to choose one of the two areas is dependent upon what they say yes to and what they say no to in their regular spending. You see, most people who stand over here and say, I can't dig over there, they're able to say yes to certain things that they actually don't need in their lives. I didn't need the money that I was putting aside for the vehicle right at the moment when God told me to spend it, but I felt like I did. I could never tithe because I've got so many expenses and my circumstances bring me over here to dig. But I can pay for cable. I can pay for cell phones. I can have a car that pushes my expenses. I can because I keep saying yes to all these other things. All these other things. I'll never forget pastoring in Pembroke. $25,000 a year as a youth pastor. Married, little boy. Friends, $25,000 doesn't go a long ways. You know that, right? And there were so many times where I didn't think I could dig over here. There were so many times, but we kept on being faithful to God. I'll never forget, as we came into Christmas time, we knew we wanted to bless people. We wanted to buy gifts for our family members. But $25,000 doesn't go a whole long ways. And so what we would determine to do is that when we came to September, we would start to say no to more things. If the teens went out to McDonald's afterwards, we'd have to say no because we were putting money aside. I won't tell you how much we were setting aside to live off of per week, but it was tight. But we so valued the importance of digging in places where people were, in people's lives and pouring into them, that we wanted to give family members and our kids, or our kid at the point, we wanted to give them something. And so we would say no to things, and we would live off of even less. And you know what? We could do it even with $25,000. We could do it. We weren't going to let circumstances control us. It meant us restricting ourselves, saying no to some things. And so from September to December, we would live off of very, very, very little and say, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. Because we so value the idea of blessing other people that we want to have money to buy them the gifts that they need. If we had to wait until December, we would have either done one of two things. We would have not bought for anybody, or we would have racked up our Visa bill. Anybody familiar with that? Don't raise your hands. But friends, when it comes to the things of giving, the things of money, the treasures, where we dig, it's not impossible to dig over here. I want you to know, I tithed with $25,000 a year. I gave in the offerings with $25,000 a year. I was able to dig here because I said no to other things. I said no to things that I really didn't need. I really didn't. Things that may have been comfortable, maybe lifestyle choices that may have made me more comfortable, but I said no to those things. I'm not talking about becoming monks or hermits, but there were things I could say no to, at least for moments, so that I could dig in eternal places. And God says, through Jesus Christ, that we need to stop storing up all the things that are temporal and start to store up things that are eternal. And he places the decision in our hands. He says, you control your money. I'm putting the shovel in your hands. You determine where you're going to put your money. You determine where it's going to be. But I'm telling you where you should put it. You should put it in things that last. Dig, dig, dig. decide where you will dig. Take control of your money. Number two, not only should we decide where we will dig, but number two, we should consider the value of what you're digging for. Friends, we need to determine we need to do a little assessment. And Jesus begins to talk about the things that some people are digging for. He says, some of you come over and you're digging for all the temporal things. This is the X. This is where the treasure is. And you're storing up things for yourselves that are so lacking in value. You buy things, and he begins to, that shovel is causing me tons of problems. You're digging in places looking for a treasure that where it says that thieves break in and steal, where rust destroys it, where moths destroy it. He says you're digging in places where what you think is valuable has so little value. You know what it's like. So some of you a number of years ago bought the biggest tube screen TV you could find. And now that thing has no value at all. Everything's flat screen. You thought there was a point, this is the car, this is what Jesus drives in the streets of gold. This is the vehicle. And you poured all your money into that, and you knew that somewhere down the road it was just going to start breaking down. I hate vehicles. I do think cars are from the devil. They cause more stress in my life. They take more of my money. They're just awful. But we pour our money and we dig in places, and Jesus says, hey, I want to help you with your decisions. Consider the value of the things that you're going to buy. Are the things that you're pouring all your money in, the places where you're digging, are those treasures things that are actually going to last? Like the things that you pour every amount of money into, are those things that are going to last? Or are they only going to last for a little while? But if you come over here and you start to dig for eternal things, those aren't the things that will just last for a little, but they'll last forever. You know the story. My mom and dad separated when I was 7 years old. And so we came to a place where we would travel to my dad's house every other weekend. Without fail, my dad would give us $5 as soon as we got into the car. And my sister and I are very different people. My sister likes to dig in very temporal places. I like to dig in places that have a little bit longer lasting results. And so my sister would take her $5, she'd get in the car, and my dad would say, here's $5 for you, Michelle. Here's $5. And before he could even get the $5 to give to me, my sister would say, can we go to the store? Can we go to the store? And we'd go over to some corner store. My dad would say, sure. We'd drive a little bit from Oshawa and find a corner store. And my sister would go into that store the very first night. The money has barely been put in her hands. And she's ready to spend it. She comes back out with bubble gum. The worst kind ever. It's got more sugar than a bag of sugar. It's just unbelievable. And the bubble-licious stuff, the stuff that you can smell 3 streets down. The purple. She gets the most sugary, grapiest, scented. And she doesn't just put one piece in her mouth. She does the whole thing at once. She looks like she just had her wisdom teeth out. That's the very first night we're in the car, and she's got that, and she's got the bag of chips in her hand, and she's got a pop. She has spent all but $1 of her money, and we haven't even left the city. And I got the $5 in my pocket, and I'm thinking, at the end of this night, that's all going to be gone. She's going to spit out that big wad in about 5 minutes. It's going to have no more taste left. She's going to stick her hand into that bag of chips. She's going to have all kinds of little crusties around her mouth. That's going to be the only sign that she ever had the chips. But it's going to be gone. What's the value of that? And I'd sit in the back seat and I'd be thinking, what should I do with my money? I bet you there's going to be yard sales at my dad's house tomorrow. And at every yard sale there's a book. And my greatest passion in life, beyond my family and God, is books. Well, maybe next to soccer. I love books. And I think, if I buy a book, I can buy a book at a yard sale for about 10 cents to 25 cents. And even if I read that entire book, I can still keep it. And I can keep it for the rest of my days in my life. In fact, I could probably be buried with the books I'll buy at the yard sale. And so that's where I should put my money. And I would think in terms like that, and I'd buy books, and I'd buy hockey cards. I'd buy things that maintain their value beyond the moment. My sister, for just a few seconds, and she'd think that the value was in that bubble gum. Maybe it was a great, great moment for her, that bubble gum moment. But for me, I wanted something that maintained its value longer than just the moment. In our society, our world tells us that we should take our money. It's your money. They'll say that to you. It's your money, so take your money and invest in the things that bring you the greatest delight. And so we find ourselves in bubblegum moments digging for things that bring us temporary pleasures. But after just a few moments, just after a few days or months, those things lose their value. And we spend all our efforts digging in places where we find treasures that will only last in their value for mere moments. And when Jesus is talking in this moment, he says, when you are looking for places to dig, look for places that have treasures that have true value. Value that will last beyond the moment. Friends, society will tell you this: you need a big screen TV. Society will tell you you need a new car. It tells me that every time I turn on the TV. I can't believe how well my TV knows me. It knows it keeps telling me, Jeff, buy this, yes, that clothes, yes, that coat, yes, that car, yes, I need it. It knows me. It knows what I need. Tells me what the great value is. And I got my wallet out sitting on my bed watching TV. Ainsley, we need to go to the store. I'll spend my money what I think is valuable. But Jesus says, hey, you need to evaluate what actually is valuable and what isn't. What will last and what won't. What is temporal and what is eternal. We need to be thinking about the value of the items that we spend our money on. You see, everything has a value. I know this congregation doesn't just spend their money. They don't just walk into a store and that's why some of you don't shop at Starbucks. Because you appreciate the value. Some of you think it's a lack of value buying the $3 coffee when you can go to Tim Hortons and get the soup water coffee, for $1.60. By the way, I'm bipartisan. I do Starbucks and Tim Hortons. Just want to maintain the peace here in CPC. But you think, man, I'm not willing to spend the $3 because there's no value in that. Others think, man, there's incredible value. I'll spend $4 because that coffee's so good. Ainsley and I were looking for a car just before we're about to get married. And so we saw this ad, and I can't remember the exact price, but it was something like $3,000 or $4,000 for this Pontiac 6000. Anybody remember this Pontiac 6000? And so we were going to go and look at this car. Ainsley's brother-in-law and sister owned a car like this, and so we thought, this is great. It looked like it was in great condition. We went at nighttime. By the way, if you're ever buying a car, don't go at nighttime. You can't really fully see all the issues of the vehicle. And so we got into the car, and I looked, and I read, and I'm sure I read it in the newspaper, that this car had 80,000 kilometers on it. And I thought, this is great. And so we drove it around the block, and I'm convinced this is the car. God has provided an incredible car for a great price. I don't understand why it's so inexpensive, whatever the price was. I thought, man, this is great value. I'm getting this car that will last forever. And all I have to do is spend this much money, and I thought, I'm going to buy it. And then we got into the parking lot, and the lights of the front yard was a little bit brighter. And I looked down at the dashboard, and I thought, I can't really see what the kilometers are. And so I turned to the man, and I said, so this car has 80,000 kilometers on it, right? No, it's got 280,000 kilometers on it. All of a sudden, the value changed. I mean, the car didn't change, but the value did. I was prepared to go into debt to buy a car with 80,000 kilometers. But one number changed its value. Why? Because of the length it would last. Because of the length it would last. And friends, when it comes to where you dig and the treasures you're looking for, you need to start to think about that. How long will this last? Why am I putting all my money into things that will only last for a short season? I want to be really transparent, and I'm not pointing the finger because I'm feeling it too. I listened to Ian Green's message last Saturday, the seminars, and then yet last Sunday morning, and then after I took him out for lunch, he wanted to go to a mall. And I got into the mall, and I was just like, this is not fun when I realized that this money isn't mine, it's God's. This isn't fun anymore. I wanted to go to one store and buy something. I thought, I can't. It's not my money. It's God's money. I want to go this. No, I can't. So I'm not pointing the finger. I'm feeling the conviction too. But many of us live our lives as if earth is eternity. Let me say it again because it's really a good line. Many of us live our lives like this is it. This is eternity. Well, we talk about it. We talk about the sweet by and by, about how we will spend forever and a day with Jesus Christ, but all our money goes towards the things right now, and we have spent very little investing in the future. very little investing in the future. We struggle when we ask for that second offering. We struggle when we ask about the building campaign. We struggle when the preacher's talking about tithes. We struggle more than we struggle with the advertisements on TV, because we have been convinced somewhere in our mind that this moment, these 70 years that we've been given, or the 80 years that we've been given, that's eternity. But friends, this is just a speck along the long line of what eternity is actually all about. And if you were to take a line and start it right here at this X and go all the way around our building hundreds of times, you wouldn't even begin to address what eternity looked like. But the spot right here in that line, that's what we're living for, rather than the rest of eternity. I'll never forget my first moment at Lakeshore Camp. My first year, I had been a teenager at this camp for years. And now I was directing the camp, and we were in one of our services, and we probably had, the altars were packed, but we had hundreds and hundreds of students at the altar, hundreds of adults in the service. God was moving in the service. And I went off over to the side, and I just kind of stood back and was just in awe that I got to lead this type of event, this type of service. And I began to think, God, we're pouring into students right now. We're investing in eternity. We're believing that you're touching people, transforming people, that these individuals will do something so incredible that they will impact eternity forever. And then God reminded me of something. He said, Jeff, do you remember when you were 15 and you used to come to camp? Yeah. Do you remember when you were 16 and you used to come to this camp? Yeah. How much money did you have? I just kind of smiled because I was poor. I didn't have money. I didn't come to camp with this great paying job and like my pockets full of cash. My birthday always started at the beginning of the camp season. And so I would always go to camp with probably about $75 birthday money. And God said, remember that? I said, yeah. He said, what'd you do with your money? I remembered. I'm standing at the altar watching hundreds of students being impacted by God. I said, God, I'd be sitting in a service as a 15-year-old with $75 in my pocket that was the only time of the year I'd have money in my pocket. We were poor as poor could be. And I would hear the preacher talk about investing in the next generation and about investing in eternity, about the value of a changed life. And I would sit there and I knew that I could buy pop and I could buy chips, things that weren't frequent in my home. And the Spirit of God would speak to me and he'd say, Jeff, why don't you invest in eternity? And without fail, I would take some money out of my pocket. I would end up spending more of my money on the offering than anything else. And you know, that might seem like a bad idea. It's your money. It's your gift. It's your chance to bless yourself. I would take my cup over. This was probably so unhealthy. I'd take it to the taps on the telephone poles that were outside of Lakeshore cottages. They were called cottages, but they were really condemned buildings. And I'd go over there and I would fill my cup with the water from that instead of going to get a pop, because I figured that I could still quench my thirst with this water, but this was going to cost me $1, and I could actually invest that into the students of this camp. And I'm standing at this altar, and God said, Jeff, you've invested in eternity. He said, one of the reasons why you're able to stand at this moment and to partake in something so beautiful and something so meaningful is because you got it in your mind at an early age. The value is not in the things that rust away or are gone after a few bites. The value is in people's lives. The value is in eternity. The value is in investing in places and in people that will have multiple effects for the kingdom of God. The Spirit of God spoke to me so clear and says, you get to taste a little bit of what that investment is right now because you were willing to invest in places that were valuable when you were a kid. Where are you investing? Where are you digging? In the temporal things or the things that will last forever? Decide where you will dig and consider the value of what you're digging for. Lastly, friends, dig where you want your heart to be. Dig where you want your heart to be. You see, Jesus goes on in this last part of the verse and he says, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I don't know all of you very well. I know many of you fairly well, and some pretty good. But I don't believe there's anybody in this place who gets up each day and says, hey, you know what my goal is in my spiritual life? My goal is to be greedy. I want people to think that I'm greedy. I'm choosing to live a life of selfishness. This is my goal, and I don't care what anybody thinks. I choose to walk in a way that's all about me. It's all about me. No, nobody does that. In fact, the people who are in this room, most of us, we've said we want to have hearts for God. We don't want to be people who are about us. We want to have hearts for Him. We want to have hearts that are tied into Him. We want our heart to look more like His heart. But friends, the only way our heart will look more like His heart is if we place our treasures in the places where God's heart beats for. Oh, it's quiet. You see, it's impossible to say I have a heart for God, but not to put your money where His heart beats for. It's impossible to have a heart for God. Please listen. Jesus says, not Jeff Hillier, he says that where your treasure will be, there your heart will be. It's impossible to have a heart for God and not have your treasure in the same place. It's impossible. If God's heart is over here, if His heart is for the lost, and you're spending all your money there, you can say all you want about having a heart for God. But if you're not investing your treasure in the places where His heart beats, then your heart's not beating for the same things His heart's beating for. I want you to think about this. Let me make it so clear. You go back to your teenage years. Some of you are still there, but some of you need to go back a few decades. And you go back to your teenage years. And you find that girl. And I mean, she's beautiful. She's a woman of God. You think, man, she's the one. And you start dating, and you say to her, sweetheart, you have my heart. Oh, baby, you have my heart. My heart is yours. And you start singing, which I'm not going to do because I'll offend everybody in the room. But you tell her over and over again, my heart is yours. But comes Valentine's Day. And there's this other girl in the neighborhood. And you keep saying, sweetheart, you have my heart. This is the first girl. You have my heart's yours. But you take all your money and you invest it on Sally Ann. Oh, Sally Ann, she's got sweet golden long hair. She's got freckles on her nose. Not that that's sexy or anything like that. I'm sorry, I'm down. I should just move on. So, I don't know how to recover from this moment. But you're in this place where you're so enamored by this girl, and you buy her the chocolate, you buy her the Valentine's card, you buy her the big teddy bear, you buy her all this stuff, and the girl that is supposed to have your heart, she's sitting at home waiting for the phone call. And you call her up that night, sweetheart, you have my heart. You didn't give me anything. I heard you bought Sally Ann. You bought her a big teddy bear. Yeah, but you have my heart. I heard you bought her chocolates. Yeah, but you have my heart. I heard you bought her flowers. Yeah, but you have my heart. My heart, part of me. You complete me. You know, that type of thing, right? That type of thing. You're telling her over and over, you have my heart. But all your money's going to Sally Ann. You get it? You tell God that He has your heart, but your money is not going towards Him. You tell God that He owns everything, that you've picked up your cross, died to yourself, that you are His. Your heart is His heart. But every bit of your money goes everywhere else. You keep digging in places where there's silence. You can't hear His heartbeat. Oh, if you bring the shovel over here, over here to missions, to the storehouse, the church, where they're trying to reach the city of Orleans. Over here where there's evangelistic projects. Over here where Compassion International is. Over here where there's so many things that are eternal. Over here, if you just stand here with your shovel, you'll hear the beating of His heart. But if you come over here, I can barely hear the crickets. Oh God, you have my heart. But His heart's over there. And friends, you've got to dig for where you want your heart to be. If you want to have a heart for missions, put your money over in missions. If you want to have a heart for the lost, put your heart in the things that are geared towards the lost. You want to have a heart for the next generation, put your money into the things of the next generation to make sure that they know God. You want to have a heart for the things of God, put your money where His heart is beating. Put your money where where His heart is beating. That's how you have a heart for God. You see, friends, it's too easy in today's world to say that we have a heart for something. Our actions have to align with our words. And the hardest thing for Christians in this world is to let go of the dollar. But it's his anyways. It allows me to come to a place where I trust him. I am his. I want to invest my money. I want to dig where his heart is. I want to dig in places where I want my heart to be. Last story really quick, and then we're done. I'll never forget this moment at Lakeshore. I had a speaker in named Wayne Northup. And like I said, every camp or every convention, I'd have to do all these sermon appeals, and it got to a place where I was actually tired of hearing my voice. So I'd always try to figure out other people who could do it. And so I asked Wayne if he would do an offering near the end of the week, and so he said sure. And so we had the camp, and it was full of hundreds of teenagers. And he said, he talked to me beforehand. He says, I just need a volunteer. And so I said, okay. He said, I need somebody who's not a student. I need somebody. Is there any adults in the service? Well, my father-in-law happened to be there. I said, yeah, my father-in-law will do it. I'm sure of it. And so he grabbed my father-in-law, and he took him out to the prayer room, and set this all up publicly. Took him into the prayer room and just kind of left him there so that he couldn't hear what was going on. And he addressed the audience, all the students. He said, this is what I want you to do. I said, when John Meyer comes into the room, I want you to stand up, and I want you to clap like you've never clapped. I want you to shout like you've never shouted. I want you to jump up and wave your arms. I want you to be absolutely lunatic in how you respond to him. And so we thought this is going to be a fun moment in church. And so he began to talk to us about it, and I can't remember if we practiced or anything, but he said, as soon as he walks in, he said, I want you to keep really quiet. But the moment he walks through the two doors onto just to the side of the stage, I want you to give everything you've got. And so we got all prepared. He got us all pumped up. He says, are you ready? And he says, okay, go get John. So I went back, or somebody went back, and they brought him out, the doors open, and John walked out to the front of the stage, and all of a sudden the students jumped up, and they began to scream and applaud and whistle and clap and cheer. And I mean, this went on, and it didn't last for just a few seconds. It kept going on, and Wayne kept on getting the crowd going, come on, and it just kept going, and I mean, it felt like 5 minutes of people applauding and cheering and going on, and I remember my father-in-law was just kind of a little emotional. He thought, what did I do? Tears in his eyes. The old Dutch man, he was tears in his eyes, he's taking off his glasses, and he's wiping. He's never had anything like this. He's standing there, and this goofy smile on his face, tears in his eyes. He just can't believe how overwhelming this is. And finally it comes to an end, and Wayne stands up and he said, wouldn't you love to enter heaven, having invested your money into people who could give their lives to Jesus? And as you step into heaven, the multiplication of your money through people's lives would cause the crowd in heaven to applaud you. That there would be people that missionaries have touched through your donation. That there would be people that would come to Christ through what you placed in the offering. That there would be people who would have given their lives to Jesus and shared with multiple other people who have come to Christ because of what you invested eternally at some point. And he said this, when you stand in heaven, do you want the applause of your investment, or do you want silence? Bow your heads and close your eyes. Do you want the applause of heaven, or do you want silence? Applause of heaven or silence? Friends, today's altar call is not one that will take place in this room, at least not today. But it's about you making decisions in your life with your finances. I'm not here to get more money. I honestly am not. This is an issue between you and God. But Jesus mentions it over and over and over and over again. Decide where you're going to dig. Determine the value of your treasure. And dig in places where you want your heart to be. It's the choices that you'll make today and tomorrow. Does that mean we can't have nice things? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean that we need to live in some mud hut? No, it doesn't mean that. But it means that we need to be very conscientious about our money. We need to ask the questions, where are we investing? What do we truly value? Where is our heart most often? You'll know because of your account statements. You'll look at your account and you'll see where your money is gone. You'll get your Visa statement back, and they do the breakdown nowadays, how much you spend on restaurants, how much you spend on entertainment and on pleasure. You'll know based upon the things that you think about using your money for. You'll know where your heart is. And I know this seems like such a private issue, but Jesus talked about it over and over and over again. I want this to be a church that seeks the applause of those who we've invested in, those who have tasted of the gospel. I want this to be a church that's invested wisely. So, Father, as we search our hearts, I pray that we will seek the applause that's eternal. And even if it was nobody in heaven, I pray that we would go after your applause. We want to take our money and dig in places where there is treasure that does not get destroyed by rust, that moths cannot eat through, that robbers can't steal. We want to dig in those places. And God, we want to determine what is really valuable. We want to put our money towards things that will last, eternal things. Lastly, Lord, we want to put our money in the places that your heart beats for. I want to put my money in the things that you beat for. I want to put my money where your heart is. Help us to think about that, God. Help us to use the finances that we are just stewards of to make an impact on this world. With your heads bowed, your eyes closed. Let me ask this one question, then we'll be done. I'm going to give one announcement just as we conclude. But you're in this place and you'd say, Pastor, I don't know everything that's going on. I don't understand everything that's taken place this morning, and I don't even necessarily know everything about God, but I know this is that he's here and I sense him, and I haven't had a relationship with him, but I want to have a relationship with him. I want him to be in charge of my life, and I want to give him my life today. If that's you, you'd say, I want to give my life to Jesus fully. I've never done this before, or maybe I did, but I've walked away, and I want to do it afresh. I want to take Jesus as my Lord and my Savior. If that's you, would you just raise your hand? No one's looking around, just you and me. Just raise your hand very quickly. Is there anybody this morning? Thank you, sir. Thank you. I see your hand. Anybody else? Just wait one moment. Sir, I just encourage you after this service, if you wouldn't just mind coming to the front, there'll be somebody here to meet you, and they'll walk you through the next stages. And if there's anybody else who hasn't raised your hand, I just encourage you to come to the front too. There will be people here waiting for you. In just a moment, we're going to walk out, and we'll have to make some decisions with this message. I want you to reflect, not just on this moment, but this afternoon. Husbands and wives, you may need to sit down together and look at your finances. You may need to ask yourselves about that next purchase. But let's be a church that invests in the things that God would invest in. Let us be people who dig for the right treasures. Dave, I'm going to invite you just to come right now.
Good afternoon. I am pleased to present an opportunity for our assembly to bless a missions team that is heading out. The missions committee, in association with the Thailand missions team, in association with the Community Pentecostal Spaghetti Association, in association with the Food for Missions Trip Committee, are pleased to present the Great Spaghetti Lunch Fundraiser for Thailand Short-Term Missions Trip, or the GSLFTS-TMT. So please feel free after the service to join us in the gym for what I guarantee is the best spaghetti lunch you will have today. We will be taking a free will offering, suggested donation of $5 a plate, $15 a family, but we also want to suggest that you're free to donate over and above that. All this money will be going to our short-term missions team to help raise their funds to go. There will be hosts just inside the gym to accept your donations and to make change if you require that. We do have a gluten-free option for those of you that are intolerant to gluten. It's basically just a plate of cucumbers, but that's there as an option.